Chapter 8. A Strange Mix-Up. Ned Nickerson made a flying leap into the hall, intending to tackle the intruder, but the man stood still and whisked the handkerchief from in front of his face. "What's the idea of forcing your way in here?" Ned demanded. Nancy had hobbled to the hall and stood staring at the man in blank amazement. He was the one who had sat opposite her on the plane, the person they suspected of having sent the warning note to the Fontaines. He recognized Nancy at once and seemed thunderstruck to find her there. "You live here?" he asked. Before she could reply, there was a frantic pounding on the door. "Don't let anybody in here!" the stranger cried. "I was being followed." At this moment, Mr. Drew opened the door of his study. As he asked what was going on, the pounding on the front door was repeated. "Let me in!" cried a girl's voice, which Nancy recognized at once as that of George. Nancy opened the door and her friend rushed in. "Oh, I tried to warn you," she exclaimed. "But this man, he got here ahead of me." "Warn them about what?" the stranger asked. "That you were coming here," George replied. "I didn't want Nancy or anyone else here to be harmed. Nancy, get the police!" "Harm? Police?" the man asked. He seemed dismayed. "I don't know what this is all about, but I did not come here to harm anyone." "Then why are you here?" George asked. "I've come to see Mr. Carson Drew," the man answered. "I understand that he is an attorney. I have a case for him." Mr. Drew stepped forward and introduced himself. "And your name?" "Johann Koff." "Millie Koff's father?" Nancy exclaimed. "Yes." "I understood from Mrs. Parsons that you and Millie had left town, and no one knew where you had gone," said Nancy. Mr. Drew added, "You will forgive us if your mysterious disappearance seems suspicious to us?" "I will forgive you," Mr. Koff said, "and I will explain everything." "You mean I've been shadowing you for nothing?" George exclaimed, sagging weakly against the doorframe. "You mean you—" Mr. Koff laughed. For the first time, he recognized George as one of the girls who had stopped him on the street the night before last. He said he had merely been out for a stroll and was amazed at their actions. "I assure you, the Drews do not need protection from me," the caller said. Turning to Mr. Drew, he added, "Because I need your trust, I'd like to offer proof of my identity." He took out a wallet and several letters which he showed to the lawyer. When Mr. Drew seemed satisfied with them, Mr. Koff added, "And now, may we talk alone?" Mr. Drew led the way into his study and closed the door. Nancy went to the kitchen and explained to the Fontaines what had happened. She advised that they remain there until after Mr. Koff had left the house. They agreed, and Nancy joined George and Ned in the living room. 5 minutes later, Mr. Drew came to the door of the study and called to his daughter. "Please come in, Nancy," he said. "I want you to hear an amazing story." He indicated a chair alongside his desk. As Nancy seated herself, he told her that the caller was a writer for newspapers and magazines. "I've come to your father," Koff explained, "with a law case which may also need a little detective work." "Nancy," said her father, "Mr. Koff has had a strange experience which I believe will interest you." Mr. Koff leaned back in his chair, then began. "I became excited on the plane, fearing it would crash because I have much work to do for my native land of Centrovia, from which I escaped. I was so upset on the plane that I picked up a briefcase which I thought was my own from the overhead rack. When I reached the Claymore Hotel, I discovered that it was someone else's. There were papers inside that indicated that the owner was a Mr. Busby in New York, so I sent the case to him airmail, special delivery, at once. Then the trouble started. I had a phone call the following day from a man here in River Heights who said that the briefcase belonged to him. Busby had notified him and was sending it along. The man here is David Judson of Oakwood Avenue. Nancy was startled at hearing this name, but felt it best not to reveal yet that she knew Mrs. Judson and her husband. This David Judson, the Centrovian went on, told me that Mr. Busby was a business competitor of his. As a result of seeing confidential material in the briefcase, he had learned several business secrets and profited from them by getting several large orders. Mr. Judson claims he has suffered considerable financial loss because of it and is demanding damages from me. Could he collect, Dad? Nancy asked. Under certain circumstances, the lawyer replied. But listen to the rest of the story. Koff continued. Well, Judson was belligerent and aggressive. He frightened me, so my daughter and I packed up at once and went to the hotel in Cliffwood. But he found out where you were? Nancy asked. Yes. He tracked us down, and tonight he made a new demand by phone. He said he had proof that I had deliberately picked up his briefcase. A girl on the plane near me would swear to it. Nancy looked up quickly. Did Judson mean her? There was no other girl sitting nearby. If Mr. Judson produces this witness, said Nancy firmly, she'll be a phony, so don't worry about that. I feel that the whole thing is a frame-up, Mr. Drew stated. This man Judson hopes to get some money in an easy way. We'll try to put a stop to the threats at once. Suppose you drop a note to Mr. Judson, telling him that you have turned the matter over to me. If he still wishes to bring suit against you, I'll agree to accept the case. But I understand through a friend who spoke to the superintendent that Mr. Judson has left Oakwood Avenue and did not say where he was going, Koff objected. The post office may know, said Mr. Drew. And you might also try general delivery, Nancy suggested. I will do that. Thank you, the Centrovian agreed. Nancy asked, Did you get your briefcase back? No. Mr. Busby wrote that he knew nothing about mine. It contained both my name and address, but has never been returned. Johann Koff's face grew grim. I am greatly disturbed, he said. There are many valuable things in it, and I am concerned over the harm that may come to me and my daughter if the information should fall into the wrong hands. Harm? Nancy repeated. In my briefcase, Koff explained, were a number of letters from the Centrovian underground in various countries. Through them, the occupying authorities might trace the loyal people who are working for us. I am sick with worry. As Koff stopped speaking and stared sadly at the floor, Nancy felt sorry for him. She said, I hope everything will soon be straightened out, and that your daughter Millie can return to the charity show. I understand she's a wonderful ballet dancer. Yes, Koff agreed, relaxing for a moment. Then he looked grim and his voice rose excitedly. Before the occupation, there were many wonderful dancers in Centrovia, but no more. No more. The hearts of our people are crushed. They do not have the time nor the spirit for singing and dancing. Did you know many of the famous Centrovian dancers? Nancy asked. Indeed I did, Koff replied. Most of them were killed, but a few fled the country at the time I did. I'd like to find them. I remember one family in particular, the Provaks, who went to Paris. The mother was an exquisite beauty. She and her husband died there. I've often wondered where their children went. What are their names? They're known as Hélène and Henri Fontaine. Koff's voice rose to a high pitch. If you should ever hear of them, let me know at once. Nancy received this information with mixed feelings. Her old suspicion that Koff might be playing a double role flashed across her mind. Yet the man seemed sincere. Should she call in the Fontaines? The young sleuth glanced at her father's puzzled face. Evidently, he too was trying to fit Koff properly into the strange picture. Catching Nancy's eye, he shook his head slowly as if to say, "Give nothing away." But the decision not to reveal the whereabouts of their guests was suddenly taken from them. Hélène and Henri Fontaine hurried into the study. End of Chapter 8.